There we go. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future of food, and I think it's in a time where everything is in question. Whether people in the audience are thinking about places in the world that don't have enough food, places that have too much, other places that are suffering from not having enough water. Whether in parts of the world we're saying GMO is the answer, and it's feeding us. Or in other parts we're saying GMO is a blight, and we don't understand it, and maybe it's bad for humanity. It goes on and on. Food waste, food contamination. And I feel like a little bit like this picture. If you remember from Office Space, the quintessential PC load letter. Like, I don't understand what's going on. It's way too big for me. In the climate change discussion, it's disempowering. It makes us feel like we can't do anything about it. So to make a very concrete example, let's start with something that we've probably all in the audience eaten in the last few days, an apple. So I'm going to ask the audience, how old do you think an average apple is in the United States in a grocery store since the date that it was picked? So let's see a show of hands to 1 day to 1 month. 1 day to 1 month, all right. 1 month to 5 months? A lot more hands, about half the audience. 5 months to 10 months. A good third of the audience. And 10 months and above. 3 hands, 4 hands, he cheated. So the average age of an apple in a grocery store in the United States is 11 months. So this is because apples are hedged like commodities. They're picked, they're wrapped in wax, they're put in cold storage. That cold storage, the O2 content, the oxygen content of that cold storage is drawn down to slow the development of that apple. So by the time it gets to our grocery stores, all of the antioxidants in that 11-month-old apple are gone. They're basically little balls of sugar. So how did we get to the point where an apple a day used to keep the doctor away, and now an apple a day gives you diabetes? So I think the biggest shift that we're all looking at is the kind of, from the 70s, 80s, desire and need and alarm to create more, cheaper food, to now our call being we need better, more sustainable food. There's a seismic shift in the world when McDonald's marketing campaign, what they're betting everything on, is telling you what's in the Chicken McNugget. Like the most mysterious food item of all time, now coming to the forefront and them wanting to tell us everything about it. I think food is also now confronting the networked revolution, the networked economy. How will food be rethought, interconnected to billions of users over the next few years? And of course, coming up against massive data, things like Human Genome Project. Some of our speakers here will talk about nutrition and how it relates to the things that we eat and how it relates to chronic disease. So without further ado, I'll introduce Kimbal. Kimbal Musk is a board member of Tesla, SpaceX, and Chipotle, but more importantly, a renowned chef and founder of the Kitchen Community. And the Kitchen Community is engaging hundreds of thousands of students in the US through a Learning Gardens program to learn more about what they eat, where it came from, and how to create a better future. So, Kimbal?
Thank you, Gil. Thanks for the video that I'm going to show. In the interest of time, I think let's just dive in.
Yep.
Our goal is to get communities thriving through real food. That means working with local farmers and other purveyors that we have a real connection with, creating a culture with mission-driven jobs, and ensuring everyone in the community has access to simple, real food that truly nourishes them.
When I was growing up, I ate food that we were connected to. It was food my mother had picked. It was food from local producers or local shops. And that is what I considered to be real food.
Instead of real food, we were eating high-calorie, nutrient-poor food shipped in from thousands of miles away. And the results of not being connected to real food has been awful. Obesity now costs us more than smoking and gun violence. In some communities, over 20% of our kindergartners are obese. That's not something they did to themselves. That's something we did to them. To get communities thriving, We need to change the food culture at every level. The Learning Garden is different to traditional school gardens. It's designed for teachers to just spontaneously teach in it. It's a beautiful environment. The results were pretty impactful. These kids were doubling their intake of fruits and vegetables. You can see an increase in test scores by up to 15 points on a 100-point scale. Phenomenal results. One of the best and absolute favorite things they grow is carrots. When a kid pulls a carrot out of the ground, all they see is a little green sprout, and out comes a carrot. I mean, it's like a magic trick. With a focus on city-by-city expansion. We go into a city like Memphis or a city like Chicago, and we do 100 learning gardens at a time. Now that may sound like a lot, but it's still a drop in the ocean of what really needs to happen. In 2004, when we opened our restaurant in Boulder, there were no restaurants working with local farms. We were one of the first to do it in the community.
We put about 1.3 million into the food economy on an annual basis while feeding around 900,000 people a year. I think the word connection is hugely important. If we feel connected and we feel important, we're connected to the food, we're connected to the people we work with, we're connected to our guests, and that to me sums up a huge achievement.
Thinking about food as a way to bring the communities together, whether it's a home-cooked meal with your family, sitting down at the restaurant, or working with your peers as a 7-year-old child in a learning garden, community through food is just awesome. And we want to do that as much as we possibly can.
Man, I like your style. Make it last a little while.
Thank you.
Great. Seems like a central focus of the work about community. Can you kind of expand on that?
I love the community focus. So I think we had a wonderful chat. We had a wonderful chat last night about a talk or study in Harvard about what made people live longer, and it wasn't actually. It was this Harvard study. It's been going on for 75 years, and it wasn't the vitamins they were taking or food. Frankly, it was their depth of connection to other people around them. And food has this incredible power to do that, and in fact, it's one of the remaining ways we do that, having lost libraries and other community hubs in our society. And so I view food as a critical mechanism, the core mechanism to connect with others. And while, of course, good food will make you live longer and healthier and happier, the way you eat food, how you eat food, getting away from eating in the car, getting away from eating in your cubicle and back to eating with others and building those relationships, I think that's where what I really love most about food. And I love food because it's tasty.
Amen.
So what are you finding most surprising about working with all of these students that maybe come from a background of very little education about food?
Everywhere has little education about food. Even if you live in Silicon Valley or you live in Memphis or New York City, these kids have zero education about food. They can't tell you they might be able to tell you what a tomato looks like because they've seen it in cartoons, but they couldn't tell you what a potato looks like. It's pretty amazing how little we've educated our kids in this area. So for us, going out and simply just doing basic food literacy is extraordinary, the difference. And you just have to make a 2 or 3 degree change in their life when they're 5 or 6 years old. And that's a lifetime of, it's a completely different place at the end of their lifetime where they'll end up.
So we were talking last night about community, and I was thinking, I live in a brownstone in Boston. I don't know my neighbors. I would never eat with them. But I think you're doing some maybe I want to, but I'm a little too busy. So I think you're doing some interesting things around bringing together strangers or people with similar maybe values that wouldn't have met each other around food.
Yeah,
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our restaurants, we started with community tables back in 2004. They're much more popular now, but back then it was quite avant-garde. And you buy a seat at the table and you sit with other people, and the food is served family style. And it's very successful in some cities, and in other cities we're kind of trying to navigate the community and figure out how to do it. But the goal, again, is to take someone and get them connected to their community, become that community hub, and use food as the mechanism for it.
Great.
And then also they connect back to the farmers who are actually serving it. So it's not the apple that's been in storage for 11 months. I thought it was 14 months, but it's actually, this apple was grown by a farmer that we can identify. Even if they don't know them personally, they believe that there's a connection between the food they're eating and where it came from. And I think trust in the world of food is just completely gone. And so if we want people to eat better and live better, we have to bring trust back into the system. So trust and community are my two things.
Great. I think that's a great transition, especially on the erosion of trust. And as we search for guideposts, we're getting all kinds of information, and it feels like the things that we might have said last year we would completely contradict this year in terms of what's good for you. When we're setting nutrition policy that affects, generations 10 years later, and we change that around given new scientific knowledge. So who do we look to now? Where do we find kind of leadership? And I think I'll introduce Molly here. Molly being a medical doctor and practitioner in scientific wellness and the quantified self. So as we're producing all of these new data streams, as we're getting sequenced, how do we interpret those in new fields that are emerging, like nutrigenomics, like metabolomics? So Molly?
Hi. I think I'll get up here and give the talk since
Please
it
do.
might make the most sense. So my name is Dr. Molly Maloof. I have many different roles, but here today I'm here to talk to you about how technology is enabling food as personalized medicine. Kimbal really hit on this in his talk around the potential of lifestyle factors to transform our performance. When I was in medical school, I was really stressed out, very burned out, didn't take good care of myself. My first board exam score was average. I realized that it was up to me to transform my lifestyle to improve my health. And by the time that I made all these different changes, I got my board exam score up to a 99th percentile. And that's what really got me passionate about human potential. But unfortunately, in America, most people are held back by their physiology. And they'll never reach their potential because they don't take care of their health. And I look at health as this continuum. It's not just about disease and disability, and medicine in America focuses mostly on this. It's about what is optimal health. And I believe that optimal health is not a destination, but it's a continuous process of active participation in a goal-oriented wellness lifestyle. But most people are heading in the other direction. And chronic disease is skyrocketing. By 2030, we might end up having 50% of our country with chronic diseases, which is pretty terrifying. And the drugs that we're using to treat these metabolic diseases that are causing chronic disease, these are actually leading to nutritional deficiencies, because we're trying to fix the underlying enzymatic problem behind these diseases, but the reality is that it's our diet that's causing them. And this is a great picture from the Tufts School of Human Nutrition. Now, prevention is actually really simple. You just need to follow some basic guidelines, like eating 5 or more vegetable servings a day. But most people don't do this because behavioral change is really hard. And broad guidelines don't work really well to change individual behavior. I believe that people want personalized recommendations. They want to know what exercises they should do for their health and what kind of healthy fats they should be eating. Because metabolism is really complex, guys. There isn't one diet that fits everybody. And I think you need to experiment to find out what works for you. In my opinion, the next frontier in technology is this exploration of not our social media, but our inner media. And quantifying these wellness metrics helps us determine if our experiments are working. So right now, when you go to the doctor, you get this lab panel, and you get once a year, and it's interpreted basically you're normal or you're abnormal. But in the future, you're going to get all these different types of lab tests. And I actually do these in my own practice today. And I do them multiple times a year, and I contextualize genomic information with all this data. It's very time-consuming and manual, but eventually we'll have software to make this easier. And certain software that I'm starting to implement in my practice is making the interpretation of these lab tests more personalized and actionable. A great example of this is an example of my own genetics. So I found that I had some homozygous mutations in superoxide dismutase, which is an inflammatory, it's an enzyme that helps manage inflammation. And then I had this actual enzyme level tested in my blood. And I found that, in fact, my genes were being expressed, and not in a good way. So what I ended up doing is I added more spirulina to my diet because it's a natural form of superoxide dismutase. This is just one example of how nutrigenomics can change behavior. But there's a bunch of companies trying to scale this personalized nutrigenomics. They're combining genetics, labs, behavioral markers, and health coaching to give personalized recommendations to make behavioral change honestly easier. But let's return to the present, because this is pretty much in the future. What we need to figure out right now is how to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables. How do we get people to eat more high-quality whole foods? And some of the problems that I'm seeing is just people look at this as really inconvenient. People look at meal planning as inconvenient. People look at cooking as inconvenient. And fortunately, or unfortunately, we have lots of interesting types of innovation trying to solve these problems. Now, this is one that I really don't believe we should be turning to. This is kind of a scary future where people are eating fake foods that are packaged. There's a company called Soylent, which is somewhat popular in San Francisco. I don't think this is the answer at all. One of the things that I think is quite interesting is these companies that are making meal delivery possible. So if you're going from eating really unhealthy and you want to eat healthier, for some people, ordering a meal delivery service is going to be the best way for them to get the healthy foods into their diet. There's also meal planning boxes that are combining recipes with ingredients and giving you sort of an easy entryway into cooking. And there's also just grocery delivery services. And I saw a talk yesterday about a company that's making robots delivering groceries for the last mile. Now, what I was here to talk about today was food as medicine. And these are some doctors who are legitimately prescribing meal programs as medicine to treat different diseases. Terry Walls is treating multiple sclerosis with her autoimmune paleo diet. Dean Ornish is treating cardiovascular disease with a vegetarian and low-fat diet. And for type 1 and type 2 diabetes, a ketogenic diet in some cases actually can help. And all of these pictures below these diets are companies in the Bay Area that cater to these specific meal plans. So I asked myself, okay, what's the cost of disease per year, and what's the cost of one of these meal plans? And it turns out that it's about $5,000 cheaper to give people healthy food. And in fact, healthy food can sometimes reverse disease. Companies like Tesla and Airbnb are recognizing the importance of food in their productivity of their workforce. And they're really leading the way in creating an environment of health. So in conclusion, maybe what we should be thinking is letting food be our medicine and letting technology deliver our food. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Molly. I keep asking Molly to just follow me around and make sure I don't stick bad things in my mouth. And maybe one of these days she'll take me up on it. All right. So we'll switch a little bit, and we'll talk to Sam. Sam Kass is a former senior nutrition policy advisor for the White House, also personal chef to the Obamas. After that, now going into a role as a senior nutrition analyst with NBC News, and also a colleague of mine as a fellow at the Media Lab. So Sam, if you could talk to us a little bit, help us understand this kind of convergence of nutrition, climate change, and maybe robots, that would be cool.
Robots. Ooh. Oh. Would love to. All right, I'll go up here too, to keep the trend. How is everybody? Grüß Gott. Maybe I should do that. Come on. I trained in Vienna, so I have some very bad kitchen German in my back pocket. It's great to be here at DLD as a chef and sort of food policy guy. It's especially exciting for me to be here in the midst of a tech conference, and one of the best in the world, of course, because our food system needs to be dramatically disrupted. It's a $21 trillion industry, and I would argue that it's maybe the most inefficient of our big systems that we have. Right now, if we step back and look at it, we've gotten very good at producing a lot of calories, and that's often scoffed at, but it's a huge accomplishment. The entire human experience has been defined by lack of food, and now we have an overabundance of calories. So that's globally, even though they're not distributed equally. So that's a big deal. But if you step back and look at it, we have a system that has incredibly high costs for inputs, dramatically degrading the foundation of the system, particularly water and our soil. Globally, we waste about a third of what we produce. In the United States, 40% of what we produce ends up in a landfill. And you can't name another major system that wastes about 30% of what it produces. And it's creating these very distorted outcomes. On the one hand, we have 1 billion people globally that are just under 1 billion that are malnourished or undernourished, and upwards of that number that are overweight or obese. In the United States, it's 1 in 3 are obese. So for me, what the future of food is going to be defined by the convergence of climate change, sustainability, and our health, very much along the lines of what Molly just talked about. On the climate side, food and ag accounts for 1/4 of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. Number 2, only behind transportation. Only behind energy and ahead of transportation. But all we hear about, I was in Paris for COP21, all you hear about is energy, energy, energy. But it's also on the front lines of the issue. It is going to be, our food system will be dramatically impacted and already is being dramatically impacted by climate. So for example, a lot of the products that we hold dear and that we love are going to be increasingly difficult to grow for our kids and our grandkids. So things like chocolate. Oh, now people are starting to get a little more serious about dealing with food. Wine, coffee, shellfish. The acidity in our ocean is growing so fast that it's predicted within our kids' lifetimes, shellfish will not be able to form the shells any longer. Crustaceans, lobster, crab. Once that starts to happen, the repercussions throughout the supply chain in our oceans are going to start to collapse. So these are all of the sort of implications that we're going to face. And waste is a huge driver of this. If waste were a country, it'd be the 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases. 27% of the land under cultivation around the world is producing food that ends up in a landfill. So all the water and energy and transportation that goes to produce that ends up in a landfill that's producing methane, which is one of the most powerful greenhouse gas we have. That's just insane. On the flip side, food and ag can actually be, unlike energy or in these other sectors, a solution. The right practices can actually sequester carbon in our soil. So I think this is going to be a defining part of what shapes our system going forward. So what does that mean? That means practices that are much more efficient in water use and fertilizers. That means practices that are actually taking carbon out of the air and putting it in the soil. And that means diversified systems, more diversified systems. We're going to have to eat less meat. Unfortunately, as a steak lover, it pains me to say that, but it's true. And that's going to be really the future. On the health side, Molly talked a lot about this and talked about it well. In the United States, for example, food is the #1 cause of preventable death and disease in our country by a lot. Over 9 million years of healthy life is lost every year in the United States alone because of food. And these kind of Western diseases, so 1 in 3 of our youngest kids, I spent a lot of time working with the First Lady on these issues, are on track to have diabetes in their lifetime. So 1 out of 3 American kids right now in our schools, if we don't dramatically change course, will be diabetic. That's nuts. And what are we telling them to do? We're telling our kids to eat more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, more of their diets to be plant-based, more diverse diets, eat less meat, drink more water. So the outcomes of what we're driving for climate change and sustainability are the same outcomes that we're driving towards for health. And that, for me, is what's creating this incredible opportunity and starting a very disruptive period, which is of great excitement to me. So I'm going to try to wrap this up quick because we want to get to the panel conversation. I can feel Caleb.
So many questions for you.
So many questions. So I think the personalized medicine and health, the convergence of healthcare and food is going to become one and the same as it used to be for millennia. That's going to come back into vogue. The microbiome is going to transform how we understand food. We're actually feeding our guts, the trillions of bacteria in our guts, which then feed us. That's going to completely upend how we understand health and nutrition. I think our kitchens are going to be places that are transformed into smart centers that actually are helping us manage and cook our food. If you think about our kitchens, unlike the rest of our lives where we do things 3, 4, 5 times more efficient and faster than we did 20, 30, 40 years ago, the best thing we have going for us in our kitchen is the microwave. And with all due respect to our microwaves, it's kind of bizarre how technology has completely missed the kitchen. So from the field to our kitchens to our guts, and to our ability to drive transparency, spectrometers are going to be in everybody's phone in the next 10, 15 years. And our ability to understand everything about a product that we don't have to rely on a company to tell us is going to drive transparency throughout the supply chain. So I think people are going to be able to take deep control over the entire process at the push of a couple buttons. The one challenge, I'd say, and I'll close on this, is that food is the deepest expression of who we are as a culture, how we understand ourselves as people, what we value. And I think, as Kimbal talks a lot about, it is the way that we can relate to ourselves in an era where we're becoming increasingly disconnected from each other. We can still touch, smell, feel, experience. And the challenge for technology in all this is to enhance that experience, not become a barrier between people and that experience. And I think that's going to be the conversation that will play out for the next 10 to 15 years about how do we actually make that more rich and less sterile. So I'll stop there, but thank you guys.
Thanks. All right, and if you have burning desire to ask questions, we may have time for it if we go fast enough, so start thinking about it. I want to follow up on the $21 trillion opportunity.
Yeah.
Really interesting explosion this year. I mean, Silicon Valley alone has invested over $500 million in new food startups, from everything from Instacart, Blue Apron, we were talking about last night, is killing it. Impossible Foods, Modern Meadow, on and on. Yeast being engineered to produce milk. Spectrometers going into our phones to tell us where everything is, what it is exactly. I'd like to hear from each of you, which of these do you think will truly be the most disruptive and produce the biggest benefit in, let's say, the next 3 to 5 years? Kimbal, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I actually think this is one area where Silicon Valley does not shine. So I don't think the answer will come from those guys. Not to say there's a lot of capital there, but Blue Apron is based in New York City. The companies that are going to generate, I think, the major changes in the world of food are people who actually understand what food is. If you think about even where I live in Colorado, you've got the Whole Foods, sort of, half of Whole Foods based there, and Austin, Texas, and you've got Chipotle. I actually think that food is not a technology problem. There are lots and lots, to your point, there are lots of places technology plays where you can make getting groceries more convenient. You can get cooking easier through Blue Apron and others. But it's not as I know this is a technology conference, is probably it's not what you want to hear, but it's not as much of a technology problem as it is a business process problem. So if you think about farming and how do you make farmland more productive and not do the same thing, trust me, that is not going to come out of Silicon Valley. That's going to have to come out of people who actually have farmland. And there's some phenomenal folks in California that are working on it, but not in Silicon Valley, around how do you take productivity of everything from pasture land to corn to whatever, and double that productivity using food waste, composting, things like that. They're just not coming from Silicon Valley. So I think the opportunity is, I believe, an annual revenue stream of about $5 trillion. It's about 10 times the size of the software industry. So, and we're never going to not need food. So I think it's an amazing opportunity. I just kind of view it more like whether we're going to find the solutions outside of Silicon Valley. Soylent Green being the poster child of why we should not let Silicon Valley be in charge.
I think that there's, I guess I agree and I disagree, because I'm seeing a lot of really amazing supply chain changes being created from technology and technological solutions that are enabling better access to fruits and vegetables for individuals. But then there's also the agriculture itself is being transformed with big data and with drones and with all these different ways of monitoring weather to optimize the production of food. And I'm from cornfields of Illinois, and so I understand the problem of how farmers are basically encouraged to produce more output per acre, and what we get is really, we get less nutritious food. So I think what we need to figure out is how do we continue to grow large quantities of vegetables and fruits given climate change, because these are the things that are going to heal our bodies. And so I do think we're going to need new technology to do that.
No, we will need we will need new technology, but Germany has the best farm robotics in the world.
Right.
And robotics is fantastic.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to real food, not corn and soybean feed for animals. Picking apples or harvesting celery, that's machinery, that's robotics. There is even AI in that stuff, but it's generally not a Silicon Valley solution.
Right.
And the reason I believe that is simply because they're the ones who are totally heavy eating Soylent Green.
So Molly, how close are we to the Star Trek kind of tricorder? Because I'm actually hearing a lot about this now, and the ability to link, some AI, machine learning to nutrition data or genetic data about individuals. So how close are we to that?
So the interesting thing is sensors are getting better every year, but some of the stuff that I think is even most useful for like point of care laboratory diagnostics is stuff that we've had for, I guess that's relatively new. Things like nitric oxide strips, salivary pH strips. What we're getting is we're having our devices do a better job at reading these reagent changes better than our eyes can. We're not that far away, honestly, but it's all about the packaging and the customer experience. And one of the things that I think is really missing from a lot of these companies that are trying to develop these point-of-care lab tests is they just deeply do not understand what it means to translate the science into something that's like palatable for the consumer.
Right. Sam, what's going to blow it up?
I think it's going to come from a lot of angles. I mean, I think the spectrometers are going to be transformative. Right now, there's absolutely no transparency throughout the supply chain. You just read what's on the label, and that's basically the best information you can get. When the consumer can actually find out what something actually is it organic, is it not, what kind of fish it is, how old is the fish, is this piece of fruit ripe, is it actually going to go bad in 3 days? That's going to drive a transformation throughout the supply chain of actually, the food has to be what they say it is. And right now, it's far from that. And I think that's going to be a tool that will make all of these outcomes that we're driving for much more at the touch of people's hands, right there for people. But I agree, I think ultimately, if we want to get where we have to go, we have to make this much easier for people. If cooking dinner is a full-time job in and of itself, people aren't going to be able to be successful. And we have to make it aspirational, this way of life. We've spent a lot of time trying to convince people to eat broccoli because it has fiber and vitamins and nutrients. And junk food makers are saying, eat this and you'll be happy. And you'll be full of love. And you'll have the pretty lady. And happiness, love, and sex beats fiber and vitamin C every time. Every time.
It ain't so.
And so I think we need to make this easier for people, and I think technology is going to be a major driver for that. And then we have to do a much better job communicating why this is the future we want.
So companies like Sayo, for a while, we're waiting to get them in our hands, but being able to point them at things and say, that's not actually sea bass. That's the 15 other fish that we call sea bass, and we sell it to you, and no one knows.
And I think it's less that it's, in any given moment, what the one person will be able to make. I think it's what it's going to do to the entire industry once people have the power to actually know what their food is.
Yeah, I mean, having that information, you're seeing it already now, not quite as much as what they'll get, but if McDonald's puts an ad out that says, Big Mac makes you happy, in 2 seconds you can find out that there are 47 ingredients in a Big Mac, and one of them is beef and one of them is flour, and I don't know what the other 45 are. And it's just crazy, crazy, crazy how easy it is to find out that information today. And with new technology, it'll get even more powerful. I think the more interesting thing for me, though, when I look at the opportunity in space is you've got 25 million acres of land in the US farmed for ethanol, which even in the best of times was the dumbest idea you've ever had. And now definitely with the price of oil, but even so, it's always for the environment as well as for fuel. 25 million acres in some of the most fertile land in the country. That's twice the size of California's Central Valley. So we could be farming so many things with that. We have 11 million acres of cotton that destroys the land. We're no longer competitive with cotton, so the cost of cotton's down. So you're talking about tens and tens and tens of millions of acres of land that if we could figure out what to do differently with it probably is a combination of German robotics to some modern day technology that may come out of Silicon Valley, some big data, some other things, but these are not small business plans. These are multi-billion-dollar business plans to go take on the food system and go from farming industrial food to real food, to fruits, vegetables, stuff that we actually eat. And to Sam's point, a little bit less meat. I think we can get away with eating meat, but a little bit less and a little bit more of the other stuff, and I think we'll be good.
So I'll put one more question on the table, and if there's anybody dying to jump into the conversation, please do. One of the parallels I'm seeing, it's funny now because farming is sexy all of a sudden.
Right.
And then I hear things like, people are saying, in the future of farming, there'll be many more cyber-physical systems. And I'm like, that person obviously has not climbed in a combine in the last 5 years that's already driven by satellite,
right.
That quantifies input, output, and yield while doing 20 miles an hour and harvesting 10 acres of corn while the driver touches nothing.
Yeah.
This is already there.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious. It seems like there's a trend towards decentralization where there are opportunities for efficiency, and even on the healthcare side too, trending towards the personal. So could you each try to take us into the future for a second, whether that's in your field or as an experience as a grocery store or a restaurant or a school cafeteria or a visit to the doctor. Take us 10 years into the future.
So I'm particularly fascinated with the millennials of America because I feel like they're driving a lot of trends. And one of the things that I find really interesting is that this generation of people, they're not interested in buying stuff to have. They don't really want a new car. They don't really want to own the most luxurious brands. They are spending their money on experiences, and they really value authenticity. And what I've noticed is that the experience of going to a restaurant and knowing where the food comes from and understanding why, like who made it, who grew it, like this is becoming the cool thing to have. This has been cool in Europe forever, right? But we're now just catching on. So I think this systematic transparency around food and this because we're so exhausted with this processed crap that people have been trying to feed us, and we see through it now. There's this deep desire for authenticity and really, really high quality food. And I think quality over quantity is going to be the next big thing.
Kimbal?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Molly. I think the decentralization, or the other way to say it is locally produced food, with technology that enables you to be more efficient and effective with the land, is actually so much better. I mean, so we work in Memphis, where we're converting about 1,500 acres of chemical cotton to just real normal food. It doesn't even have to be organic. And the demand is off the charts. The buyers are all there. The farms are right there. There's real trust in the system. So if you buy something from a local Memphis farm, you actually really feel like this is going to be, whoever farmed this product cares about me, cares about the land. And so I think trust is where decentralization or local really sort of come together in amazing ways. So I think the future is going to be very much about that, and it's going to be enabled by technologies that allow a cotton farmer to convert intensely pesticide-ridden lands. I mean, this is the South, to farm things that we could recognize as food and really enjoy.
I think the future looks like personalized eating and personalized growing. So you go to the doctor, you're diagnosed with you're pre-diabetic, for example. The doctor has a profile of genetic in your biome, prescribes a delivery system, a delivery food service of some kind, hits one button, the insurance company covers it because it's a much more efficient preventative strategy. And that's coupled with Caleb's City Farm, which is taking a lot. So I think there's going to be a transformation in the field, but I think urban growing and farming is going to be increasingly a part of the solution, and it's going to be done for the needs of individuals. And I think you're going to see people to be able to order from their farm what they want to eat, and grown in a much more efficient manner. And so I think that's, in the end, a couple buttons away for somebody, and it's on their doorstep with the recipes, everything ready to go. And I think that convenience is going to be what unlocks the potential for a much more sustainable and healthier future.
So what I'm hearing over and over again is trust, transparency, kind of an open sourceness of information coming for us, building community and increasing health. Thank you to the panel.